Nice to see you. Oh, that's great. Beloved friends, honored family, cherished guests and colleagues and church members, on behalf of the Gilliland family, I welcome you here today as we celebrate the life of Dr. Jack Gilliland. Would you be so kind to bow your heads with me and let us welcome the Lord to join us today. Our dear, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the wonderful music and greetings that we started off this morning with. And we're so thankful for your amazing grace. I can't wait to hear the trumpets sound like the ones here today when you arrive in the clouds of glory and we have a great reunion day again. Lord, for now, we invite your Holy Spirit to be with us for this time as we reflect, as we remember, as we cherish, and as we celebrate Dr. Jack. Thank you for being here, Jesus. In thy name, amen. I've been asked to share with you a brief history of Dr. Gilliland. Dr. Jack Gilliland was a highly respected and beloved pediatrician who dedicated his life to caring for children and serving in the Lodi community. He graduated from Lodi Academy in 1957, Pacific Union College in 1961, and Loma Linda University School of Medicine in 1965. His pediatric training was completed at the University of Washington and Children's Orthopedic Hospital. Jack then served 2 years in the U.S. Navy as Chief of Pediatrics at Lemoore Naval Hospital. In the early 1970s, he co-founded the Lodi Pediatric Medical Group here and he cared for generations of local families. In 1985, he joined the Kaiser Permanente Medical Group as Chief of Pediatrics. In 1992, he was elected the first physician-in-chief for the newly opened Kaiser facility in Stockton, a role in which he held for 12 years before retiring in 2006. During his tenure, Jack oversaw the acquisition of St. Dominic's Hospital and Medical Complex in Manteca, oversaw the construction of the Manteca Medical Office, followed by the construction of a new medical clinic in Tracy, and began the development of the Kaiser Foundation Hospital and clinics in Modesto. Throughout his career, Dr. Gilliland was foundational leader in Kaiser San Joaquin and generously supported numerous community organizations, including Hospice of San Joaquin, Lodi Rotary, and Lodi Boys and Girls Club. And here at the Fairmont Seventh-day Adventist Church, those of us who have been a church family for quite some time knew him best as Dr. Jack. We appreciated him serving and giving of his time and influence and donations as well in various areas of the church. When I was pastoring here not too long ago, I enjoyed serving on the Lodi Fairmont Seventh-day Adventist Church Board with Dr. Jack, as well as the Finance Committee, as well as the Funeral, Dinner, and Reception Committee. I also enjoyed him as a friend and have missed seeing him very much. I wanted to share with you a couple stories about him. You know, whenever there was a board meeting or extra meetings that we would have, and sometimes we did have them, of course, Dr. Jack was always a very big supporter. I cherished all my board members at the time, but he was one of my favorites. I guess I can say that now that I'm not pastoring here anymore. But he was. I also enjoyed him on various roles, serving together at the Finance Committee along with Bruce Rich, our treasurer, and then he would even give of his time, even being retired, to come out and help with the Lodi medical clinics that we had over at the Lodi Elementary and Lodi Academy. We got to serve with people like Claire Lear, and it was a wonderful time in seeing him give his consoling as well as being a consultant for different things that we housed at the clinic. And most of all, on a personal level, I enjoyed Dr. Jack just hanging out with him. I'd be here in the office working away. You know, pastors, there's a myth that pastors only work one day a week, and that's when they preach for half an hour. It's not true. Maybe for some it is, but it's not totally true. But I was working away, and he would call me up, and he said, "Hey, kid, how about we go to lunch today?" And I'm like, "We're going to go to our usual place?" "You bet." And he'd come swing by and pick me up, and we would go to Strings and have the soup and salad and bread, and on occasion, sometimes dessert. But that was usually what we would have. There were times where we thought about ordering something different, but no, that was our thing. Sadly, I don't have a picture of that. This is a food fest that they put on at the Lodi Health Clinic, but it kind of resembles the time that we would have together. And during that time, he would bring some different periodicals, and he would ask my opinion on some various things that were happening politically. And then he would bring out the church articles, and we'd talk about some things that were happening in the stages of the Christian church or the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and he'd ask my opinion and say, "Hey, take this, I've circled it for you, read it, and let me know what you think." I really enjoyed those times. And then there were times where he and Jackie would come all the way up to the lake, where we'd have our outdoor church once a year at Hogan Lake. And he had a running deal with my wife and I, and that was Jackie would make her Asian pear pie if my wife would make her inari. That was the deal. So she would bring it to outdoor church, and then by the next Sabbath, or maybe sometimes even on that Sabbath, my wife Cowdy would make her inari sushi. And it wasn't such... I love her inari sushi. It's basically rice in a tofu pocket. She makes it almost from scratch, and they just love that. And this was one of my favorite pictures of him. One time we brought like an extra long sampling of that, and he really enjoyed that. Finally, it was an honor to visit them in their home. I remember on several occasions we would come on a Sabbath afternoon and just visit and spend some time. One time I offered to cook for them, and they actually let me. And they actually ate the food. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't my best, but we enjoyed our time together. Come to find out, he had gone to school at one point with it was either my mom or somebody in the family. He knew my mother, and so we talked about family, and we talked about being in the Lord's family together. I wish we could have that visit again, and I believe when Jesus comes, we will. But for now, it's just an honor to be here today and to be a part of this celebration with you all. I know that you all have special memories of Dr. Jack, and I look forward to hearing of them all. God bless you.
I'm Charlene Prettyman, and I'm one of Jack's cousins. Our mothers, Cleo and Eloise, were sisters, and they were the only girls in the family, so we were raised extremely close. Jack and I were a couple of the first in a line of 15 grandchildren. Our grandparents, Walter and Margaret Litchfield, adored us. Our grandfather often teased our grandmother that she loved us more than she had loved any of her own kids. We were spoiled, coddled, treated like the most special treasures ever on earth. Through the years, most of us stayed very close, and I would have to say that Jack was the glue that often held us together. He always coordinated, financed, and spearheaded our Litchfield family reunions, our get-togethers, and big birthday bashes, which many of you I see here have been to. We have so many lovely pictures commemorating those events. After our Uncle Fritz and Uncle Ray and their 8 kids moved to Horsefly, British Columbia in, I think it was about 1963, we often met there for amazing fishing. You can see some pictures here of the huge strings of fish. There's nothing like fishing in a virgin lake. Often we didn't even have poles. We would just put the fishing line and a worm and a hook over the edge and pull in the fish. The adventures were absolutely remarkable. Eating moose for the first time, as well as enjoying great big fat smoked trout, was so memorable. As a city girl, I have to admit the outhouses and bathing in a great big tin tub after several other kids had been in it was an experience I'll never forget. How many people in our lives live such that virtually every person they come in contact with have only positive things to say about them? Jack was one of those rare people. In spite of his success in life, he made each of us feel seen, loved, and cared for. His genuine concern for people came through such that they knew exactly how much he cared for them. He never made anyone feel like they were less than or not enough. And how he loved babies and children. Man, we went on a cruise and took, I think she was about 2 at that time, my little granddaughter, and he would grab her cheeks, and it would make her so mad. One time she said, "I'm gonna kill you." Whether it was his family, his friends, his coworkers, his employees, his patients, families of patients, or many of the people he mentored throughout his life, we all loved and admired him. His intellect, his work ethic, his sense of humor, his amazing organizing skills, and his generosity are legendary. Over the past 60 or so years, I've had the privilege of having dozens, maybe even hundreds of meals with Jack at local restaurants. During countless times, Jack would look around and spot a table of his former patients or families of his patients. And what absolutely blew me away was the fact that he always remembered their names. I have trouble remembering my cousin's names sometimes. He would go over, have a little chat with them, and then frequently go track down the waitress and secretly cover their check. Speaking of Jack's generosity reminds me that after our grandfather died in 1961, our grandmother had a really meager income. Her Social Security, as I recall, was about $50 a month. And even in the 1960s, that wasn't a lot to live on. So in spite of the fact that he was very, very early in his career, he sent her a check every month so that she could live more comfortably. Another thing I must mention is Jack's relationship with his mother, my Auntie Cleo. They were so much more than mother and son. They were best friends. My mother called them gutty buddies because they literally could spill their guts to each other. It was an amazing and wonderful relationship to see. This has been a year of extreme loss for all of us who loved and admired Jack. It's imperative now that we remember that death ends a life, but not a relationship. The people we lose physically are gone from our sight, but not from the lives they touched. Jack lives on in each of us through the jokes he loved to tell and the memories we carry in our hearts, which know exactly that he was here, and that matters forever. Our memories keep him with us and warm us as we talk about him, write our feelings to him. It's hard for me not to pick up the phone to call him and give him the latest news or tell him a joke that I just heard. And we cry when we need to. We won't rush the healing process because we know that this wound of loss requires patience to heal. Let each of us carry forward the kindness and acceptance that Jack has taught us with his life. And to honor him, we should live fully with the love he left behind. Thank you.
So we're of the two hombres that left Lodi in '62, and we headed up north, and that's where we settled in a little valley called Beaver Valley. And you saw some of the pictures of the fishing there, and we were privileged to be able to fish not only with line and hook, but we used dynamite, which I suppose could be a little illegal. But Jack always came up there, loved it. We've got a lot of pictures that prove that, and we had a really good time. Jack was much older than us. I think 14 years older than us. And I remember all of our family gatherings, Jack was, he didn't play the games that we played as little kids, and he would have a little saying, when things got a little bit boring, or it is, hey kids, we're gonna go to the springs. Well, they turned out to be the bed springs. And it wasn't too exciting for us as kids. But one thing I really appreciate about Jack and this family is that, when we moved to Canada, it was like we didn't have electricity, we didn't have running water or, outdoor toilets. It was like we went back in time. And when I graduated from high school, because we had to go away to school, there wasn't much money to spend. And I lived with Jack and Yvonne and Melissa and Jeff, and I even took care of these kids. I was their babysitter. And we had the greatest time. And I appreciate one thing, because I couldn't afford any clothes. Does anyone remember the Squire men's shop? Yeah, he set me up. He says, let's go on down there. And he just told the guy, he knew Jack very well. And he said, this is my nephew, and fix him up. I came out of there shining like a very shiny copper penny. And I appreciated that so much.
I'm Don, and my dad was the youngest of the Litchfield clan. He didn't get to go to war because the brothers had gone to war before him, so he stayed home. But anyway, the thing is like sunshine. We have names, and everybody had a nickname. And I call him Sunshine, he calls me Moon.
He's the lesser light.
But I glow in the dark. So anyway, and Jack's name was Nanaus. And I asked him, not long ago, I said, where did the nickname Nanaus come from? And he said, you know what, I do not know. And so that's what our dads called him, and that's what he was named us. But like I said, Jack was quite a bit older, and I would used to be administrator of schools, and the younger kids, the ones I related with more were the high school kids and so on. I loved the little kids, but I could not be with them hour after hour like teachers. So, the Lord gives us different talents. But anyway, here's the thing I really realized about Jack, and that is, check out his smile. Hey, listen, life is not a bowl of cherries, right? We know that. And so as a kid, I was looking at Jack and the way he handled situations in his life, a marriage, and then a loss of his dad, and every time that these were tough times, the way he treated his mother afterwards, and then Uncle DeVerne was married to Annie Cleo, and how that joined up, and how Jack accepted everybody and tried to join the families. And he had the smile on his face all the time, and I like what Charlene said. I never heard him talk down anybody. He always was on the positive side. And then, of course, he had a relationship that went sour, and how did he handle that? He kept that smile on his face. There's a proverb that says, a merry heart doeth good like what? Medicine. And that, you keep that positive look. And then, of course, then he met Jackie and got married with Jackie, and God blessed us with more family, and how he blended the families together and united those. And then it was spoken. Of course, it was talked about the parties we had. That's where we really, in these latter years, got to really know Jack, because we were gone. In fact, we were up in Canada, with our dad's hand, and we didn't spend much time with Jack in Canada. You'll see the pictures and so on, but you don't see the pictures of us too often there, because we weren't up there at that time. We were in school or whatever. But anyway, I just loved Jack's positiveness. And then when I moved down here as administrator of a school in Placerville, Jack took my wife and I, always Christmas time. He said, hey, let's get together and let's head for San Francisco and see the boys, listen to the boys' choir. Remember that? That was awesome. And then afterwards, what did we do? We went out to eat. And Jack he loved food. So if you're around Jack, you know what I'm talking about. And just a great cousin. Like, isn't it something, the older you get, the closer you get? You know, I look and I say, you know, when Jack graduated from Auburn Academy, we just went to our 55-year reunion at Auburn Academy in Seattle. When Jack graduated from the academy here, you know, we were only 4 years old, 5 years old. So I don't recall that. But anyway, I just want to finish with this. You know, it says, and Jack, I love what the pastor said, spent time with the pastor, asking questions about spiritual things and so on. But there's a text that goes, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. You know what that says? It says, trust in the Lord with all the what? All your heart. Lean not into your own understanding, but what? But remember the Lord always, and he will direct your path. That's a beautiful promise. The other one that keeps me focused is, that will keep him in perfect peace, whom his mind is stayed on thee because he trusts in thee. Trust in the Lord always, because in the Lord is your strength. And so I just encourage each and every one of us to stay focused. Life is short. I like this saying that says, it's not how long you live, it's how you live. It's not what you've done, it's who you know. Isn't that true? So Jack was special to us, and we're going to miss him greatly.
Good morning. I'm Sandy Richards. I am married to Bill Bronner, and I am Charlene's sister-in-law, but really we are more like sisters. What an honor to speak about such a great man. Proverbs 22:1 says, a good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. And Jack L. Gilliland is a very good name. Everyone who ever came in contact with him knew it in their bones. He remembered everyone, as has been said, his patients and their families, and there's a good chance if you're here today that you are someone Jack saw in a restaurant and ended up paying for your meal as a surprise, as Charlene said, but I know there are some of us here today. He rarely allowed family to buy a meal. In fact, I moved up 3 years ago. We inherited the land that Jack's aunt Eloise lived on, and my husband moved up ahead of me. But I ended up getting a job up here and came 3 years ago. And we started the Thursday night supper club, where we would eat with Jack and with whoever else was around and came along. And I have to say that those Thursday nights are a great loss to us. We think of Jack every week, every day, and miss him terribly. He was a delightful person, and whether you were part of the clan through birth or marriage, that didn't make any difference to Jack. Family is family, and he and Jackie made sure that family gathered for holidays as well as family reunions of the greater Litchfield clan. I am so grateful that I had many years to know and enjoy Jack. And what Charlene said about babies, he would always, when he saw a family had a baby out in public, he would always go up to them and say, I'm so glad you brought your baby out. He didn't believe in leaving babies at home. He believed in having babies with everybody else. And that's because he just delighted in every single human being he ever met. I am so grateful that I had many years to know and enjoy Jack. He was an outstanding human being, humble, thoughtful, whip smart, able to have a discussion in which disagreements occurred without anybody's feelings getting hurt. Always kind and generous, a sweet father, husband, cousin, uncle, grandfather, and friend. We are so sad that he is gone now, and we miss him greatly. But as Charlene said, we carry on in kindness, as Jack would have us to do, because knowing him touched our lives so deeply that we can do nothing but emulate his good work. Thank you.
Kim, thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. My name is Kristen Spraker-Burtwissel, and I'm sort of representing the TPMG, the Kaiser era, again, that we all had the privilege to live through. So to the family and the friends, again, of Dr. Gilliland, again, Melissa, Ryan, Sherry, the Stokes, I'm honored today to pay tribute, again, to a man who meant so much to all of us. And while Jose Rivera was slated to speak, he unfortunately could not travel, but that means that you will be home before 4 o'clock. So if you know him, he was long in the tooth. So I think maybe it's a good thing, right, Melissa? But he is here in soul and spirit. He asked me to share this simple statement about Jack. He said that Jack was the tree that created a forest. Jack gave us our roots. He planted the seeds so we could all grow, personally and professionally, and he gave many of us our beginnings. I had the once-of-a-lifetime privilege to have a front row seat in which I could watch the budding trajectory of a man who was our anchor, our captain, during the early turbulent times in the formation of Kaiser Permanente in San Joaquin County and in Stanislaus County. He led all of us into its golden years of stealth membership growth, massive hiring, construction of every clinic, every medical center, or hospital. He built a physician network in 2 counties, set new systems like 24-hour clinics, Spanish call centers, specialty clinics, to pioneering cultural diversity systems, even before DEI. And his vision stood strong as he developed roots of deep servitude to all communities in San Joaquin County, all set in motion by Dr. Gilliland, just Jack. Dr. Gilliland was our Winston Churchill. He was our own lion. He was a man of historic proportions who, if not for his voice, many of us here today would not be in the seats of authority, the places of purpose, would not be who we are as leaders. For Jack, as I knew him for all the years, was someone who was not just a builder of bricks and mortars. He was a builder of people, of systems, a builder of a better community. He was a hammer, and we were simply the nails. Now, uniquely, Dr. Gilliland was someone who never lost sight of his origins, right? From his early beginnings in the fields of Lodi to his ascent in the field of medicine. To watch his role change from one of the first private practice physicians to take a chance on a new HMO, which, by the way, was incredibly risky, to serve as the chief of pediatrics, to running an organization that was in transition, took tremendous guts and tremendous grit. He always had his signature folksy manner and never seemed to be daunted at all by the forces that were forged upon him. His elegance and statesman-like qualities were needed for those times, as he carved out an organization that was cowboy rough at first. But with his vision, he crafted one small clinic into another, one medical office building into a hospital, one small system called Stanislaus Provider Network into the first KP hospital in the region. Think about it in this way. To turn everything into a massive Central Valley region system, again, that today stands and lives and breathes because of Jack. But Jack was so much more than just his accomplishments. His love for family and friends was his source of strength and his repeated source for constant storytelling, as I heard from the families this morning. And by the one family member that glows in the dark, I want to figure out how you do that too, by the way. That's brilliant. His cheerful disposition could spring life into any situation. His clinking of a glass with his signature toast, always ending with, "Hear, hear," right? Do you remember that? "Hear, hear," was his way of mobilizing a room of lookers to listeners. Jack could spin a story. He could elevate a room just by walking into it. And above all, he was a man of unbridled compassion to his patients, to his staff, to the MDs, and what he refers to as non-MDs, many, again, who are here today, and looking just as young as ever. I think of many fond memories of Jack the leader, Jack the father, Jack the community advocate, Jack the historian, the developer, and watched with other members of my own kiln, the other non-MDs during those pioneering years, Sharon Likely, Mike Geronio, Henry Alaga, Teresa Lopez, and I don't know if Marcia McDonald's here, that was McDonald's, a superpower woman that stood by his side for many, many years, and of course, Gail Slayman. As we marched in step with I call the PIC, the person in charge. But even before that noble leadership title voted him in as the new PIC, you could see how his eyes would light up when thinking about the possibilities, again, for TPMG as the chief of pediatrics. Walking the halls in his starched lab coat and tie with his soldier-style gait and that perfectly coiffured hair, he was no match for others in those early years. He was our general. He was our commander-in-chief. His fascination with creating a greater vision for healthcare, a better way of working, or advancing a concept, certainly with his plethora of ideas, put him on the map and made TPMG a contender in the local healthcare system. His connections with San Joaquin County Medical Society and his insistence that all physicians join the joined that organization was a testament, again, of how Jack knew that TPMG's survival depended on alliances, on partnerships with all community MDs. And in those early days, no one wanted Kaiser Permanente. They called it the Kmart of healthcare. If you don't know what Kmart is, please Google it. I remember Kmart. But that reputation was soon dissolved as Jack's leadership took a foothold. His belief in the power of relationships, of stewarding the good in anyone or any system, was his kryptonite. What began as an institution in the Valley as an undesirable competitive nuisance slowly and deliberately evolved into one of the most successful and thriving healthcare institutions in the region. Dr. Gilliland was widely known for his valiant optimism. I never once saw him upset or argumentative. He believed in finding the good in everyone and the opportunity and value they brought to a program, to a patient, or to a family member. And those that worked directly for him were fiercely loyal, because he was fiercely loyal to them. He remembered birthdays, knew the families of the medical assistants, all the nursing staff, and loved going into the bowels of his beloved medical office building to chat with Ron Alt and all the engineers and housekeepers. Hilda, you're in the audience, he loved you, who kept the heart of the building beating. He was a believer in possibilities and the potential of others, and it was in his nature to nurture, to always be ready with that signature smile, dimples and all, to rally the troops. He was a lover of history and knew that history also was a great teacher. So he taught us. He referenced Churchill earlier, I did, a much-loved figure that Jack often quoted. And while Jack's character was not even close to the controversial backbone of Churchill, Jack had plenty of backbone. His dedication and commitment to hiring the best doctors and staff, sticking to the need for the best quality of care, to the need for ongoing training and education, and above all, to building his own teams, was signature Jack, just Jack. Jack believed in partnerships, and I would be remiss if I did not highlight one of the longest, most enduring standing MGA PIC partnerships in history. That was of Jack Gilliland and Jose Rivera. As I refer to them, they were the Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau of TPMG, the odd couple. Again, Google it if you don't know. They were so uniquely different, but so perfectly paired. Their signature meetings, their support for each other, they were Beauty and the Beast and brought out the best in each other. For over 24 years, again, they worked side by side, traveled, innovated, strategized, and lifted TPMG to new heights. Collectively, they disarmed the community and embraced what is now the signature move of most Kaiser Permanente facilities. Get to know your community. Go beyond your walls. That was Jack. And while there are many shining examples of how the leadership, again, of both Jack and Jose set the new standard for how an organization connects with its community, Sioux Salute, the nation's largest all-volunteer health fair, put Stockton on the map because of Jack. For over 10 years, thousands of uninsured people and their families were helped by TPMG's undeniable ability to deliver care to those in need. And later, Jack brought Sioux Salute inside the walls of the medical center, calling it Neighbors in Health, where on one day we would serve 5,000 people. That was Jack. At its height, Jack and Jose replicated both pediatric and women's clinics in a hot Quonset hut on the grounds of the San Joaquin County Fair and served over 20,000 people in one day. Without hesitation, physicians and their support teams, led in part by many of the pioneering first physicians in Stockton, Dr. Michael Wong, Stuart McGeekin, Dr. Bruce Lee, Dr. Skillian, Michael Reitz, Michael Rabine, even Dr. Sharon Levine and Jay Crossan with Tony Gately would travel to Stockton to be a participant. For years, this program served mostly Latino farm workers and their families who, if only for a day, were respectfully, again, given access to some form of care. And it was during those times when thousands of families had no access to a physician, Sioux Salute and the TPM clinic was a saving grace. They later went into towards construction of a mobile medical clinic that served low-income neighborhoods weekly, lifted up its small children's clinic at August Elementary, where immunizations and weekly care was given to students. And they led numerous events like Celebration of Women's Wellness that gave voice to women across San Joaquin County, all uniquely first-of-its-kind moments and movements due to the leadership of Jack Gilliland. So Jack was in the thick of brandishing support to those who were tied to poverty, to lack of insurance, lack of voice, to giving everyone the care they needed. That was Jack. Without question, without Jack, TPMG would not be where it is today, period. And right now, Jack would not wish us to be sad. Right now, in the soul of everyone here today, a part of Jack is with you. Kind of feel it still. We're clinking wine glasses, we're toasting a good friend, we're hugging a child, and we're exuding gratitude to others. That was Jack. So all I can say is Godspeed, Jack. You are back in the arms of your loving Jackie, and you will forever be with us in memory and in mind in that forest that you planted all those years ago. And in the famous words of Churchill, I'm ready to meet my maker. Whether the maker is ready for the great ordeal of meeting me is a whole different matter. Thank you, Jack. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mel Parker, and it's an honor to share my reflections about Dr. Jack Gilliland. When I first met Jack, I was a urology resident, and my husband was finishing his last year of fellowship in pulmonary and critical care. We were in our familiar world in New York, planning to move to California, when my husband was offered an interview in Stockton, a place that we really had not considered. During my husband's interview, he mentioned that his wife was a urologist who was also looking for a position. Without hesitation, Jack said, "We'll bring her out and interview her too." I still remember flying into Stockton from New York, looking down at miles and miles of farmland and wondering what exactly we were getting ourselves into. But any uncertainty disappeared the very next evening. Jack hosted a Sunday dinner at Le Bistro with several physicians. I was welcomed, introduced to a community, and left at the end of that evening feeling that this was a place that we could call home. And I'll admit, Jack earned extra points that night by not asking me why I, as a woman, had chosen urology, a question I heard far too often in those days. So my husband and I both accepted positions, and we moved to the Central Valley the following year. A few years later, when the chief of urology left the group, Jack called me in and offered me the position of chief. I was young in my career and had not been certain that I'd be offered the role. You see, it was 1997, and at that time, just over 100 women in the United States had ever achieved board certification in urology. As one of only a handful of African American women in the field, I understood that my presence there was exceptionally rare, and that the opportunity to practice, lead, and belong could not be taken for granted. In fact, it was not uncommon in those days for a patient to come into the office and let me know that when they'd scheduled an appointment with Mel Parker, they were actually expecting to meet Melvin, and certainly were not expecting to see someone who looked like me. But Jack had a way of seeing people not only as they were, but for who they could become, and was willing to give me a chance. When I agreed to take the chief position, Jack asked how I planned to balance leadership with the responsibility of family, especially since I had just given birth to my second child a few months before. And I responded, "You worry about the department and let me worry about my family." Now, for many years afterward, Jack loved telling that story. But I think he loved it not because it was funny, but because he respected strength. He respected conviction. Over time, I came to understand that what Jack gave me was not just professional advancement. He gave me an example of leadership. Jack understood that leadership is not only about titles or positions, it's about opening doors. It's about seeing talent before it's obvious to everyone else. As I prepared for today, I spoke with several physicians whom Jack recruited and mentored. Again and again, I heard the same theme. Jack believed in people. One physician told me he had more confidence in me than I had in myself. Another described him as her cheerleader, often encouraging her to step into leadership roles she wasn't sure she was quite ready for. Jack didn't simply talk about opportunity, he created it. He championed leadership opportunities for many individuals, and his encouragement and mentorship were especially impactful in helping women leaders throughout the Central Valley and the region. And as he led, he showed that he cared about people. He remembered spouses' names. As you heard, he asked about children. He asked about what was happening in your life, and he genuinely cared about the answer. One colleague's husband described him as the jolliest person I've ever met. I think many of us knew exactly what he meant. As much as Jack gave professionally, it's impossible to speak about him without speaking about what mattered most to him personally, and that was his family. I think about Jackie and the love that they had that was so apparent to everyone. They were truly a team. Jackie was effervescent and warm with a great sense of humor. She spoke her own mind, and I loved that about her. And I found that you didn't have to be around Jack for very long before you'd hear a story about his children and grandchildren. His love and pride were unmistakable. I remember when Melissa moved to the UK and had her first child. I truly enjoyed hearing the stories of his travels back and forth and seeing how he remained actively involved in their lives despite the distance, setting a new standard for grandparenting in my eyes. Whenever I saw Jack after retirement, it was clear that his life remained full with travel, music, friends, and family. It was as if he understood that life is lived in chapters, and he embraced each one fully. So when I think about Jack, I think about his leadership and the many people whose lives and careers were changed because Jack believed in them. And I think about the kindness, optimism, and humanity that he brought to every interaction. And as I remember that flight from New York to Stockton all those years ago, looking down at unfamiliar farmland and wondering what I would find in Stockton, I now realize what I could not see then, that I was moving to a place where a remarkable leader would welcome me, believe in me, and change the course of my life. That's what Jack Gilliland did for me.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, my name's Atul Khanna. I'm a pediatrician. I was hired by Jack some 27 years ago now. I was asked by Melissa to make a speech for Jack, and I'm truly honored to do that. You know, when she asked me to do this speech, I thought it'd be simple, but it wasn't simple. It reminded me of a book I read by Mitch Albom called Have a Little Bit of Faith. It's about this rabbi who asked one of his old members will you do my eulogy? And he's like, yeah, sure. He's a sports writer and he's very famous. And then he thinks about it, he goes, what do I say about a man who I admired and respect so much? That was exactly my dilemma when I agreed to do this speech. What do I say about Dr. Gilliland, a man who I respect and admire so much? Before I get started with my story, I would like to acknowledge Ryan and Sherry. Over the years, I got to know them very well, and it was very admirable about how well He took care of both Jackie and Dr. Gilliland. Thank you so much for taking good care of my friend. So my story begins, 26 years ago, 27 years ago, when I first interviewed with Dr. Gilliland. Little did I know that he already knew me. He actually talked to my chief resident when I was a resident at UC Irvine. And the chief resident happened to grow up in Lodi. Kristen, if you're here, thank you for giving me a thumbs up. Anyways, so he knew about me, and he said, I walked in the interview, and it was the strangest interview I ever had. I walked in there, and he goes, where's your wife? And I go, well, scratch my head, and I didn't know I was supposed to bring my wife here. So my wife was a medical assistant, and I thought maybe she had applied to Kaiser too, so I did I walk in the wrong interview, or what's going on here? So anyways, so he asked me about my wife, and he asked me about my children. At that time, I just had one daughter. Anyways, he went through the benefits of Kaiser and working for Kaiser, and as all the retired physicians in the audience know, the benefits are great and all that stuff. And he looked at me kind of confused. He said, son, why don't you sign the line? And I go, Dr. Gilliland, I have to tell you, my 13-month-old daughter has a tracheostomy. And at that time, I was a resident, so we had to go through several doctors. And then when I joined private practice, we had to change insurances. And we finally found a good doctor at Stanford that said, hey, the trach can come out in 3 to 6 months. So I looked at Dr. Gilliland and I said, you know what? The only reason why I don't sign mine over to you is because I don't want to change insurances. And he said, don't worry about it, son. I'll pay for your insurance. So anyways, 3 months into this new job, the controller's office calls Jack and says, hey, what is this insurance money you're paying for? And he looks at the controller's office, he talked to the CEO at the time, and he goes, look, I guarantee you this guy will be here for 10 years. It'll only cost you $2 a month. 26 years later, it's cost you 40 cents a month. Sorry. So Dr. Gilliland, when I first started working with Kaiser, gave me a book. He wrote inside that book that, always walk the walk and talk the talk. And I think that pretty much sums up what Dr. Gilliland was about. One time I was walking down the hallway with Dr. Gilliland, and he bent down. This was shortly after he had his back surgery. And he bent down to pick up something, and I go, oh no, his back's going out. But no, he was bent down to pick up a scrap of paper on the hallway floor. He took pride in his work, and it showed. He wanted a clean, safe environment for everybody. I will say one thing about the atmosphere that Jack created. I remember walking into the administrative offices with Gail, Darlene, Janet, and Marcia. It was like walking in Cheers. You know that song where everybody knows your name and you're always glad you came? It was like that. That's the atmosphere that that Dr. Gilliland created. I want to say a few words about Marcia. Marcia, if you're here, I have never seen a relationship like that before. In the 12 years that they worked together, 12 plus years they worked together, they never had a bad word to say about each other. So that's a special relationship, and Jack created that environment. So Dr. Gilliland was a pediatrician for over 40 years. He completed his training before I was even born, and I'm no spring chicken. Dr. Gilliland served in the Navy and was very old school. I remember one time he told me a story about a baby, I told him a story about a baby that the phlebotomist going to get the blood draw from. And I said, thank God the charge nurse should get the blood from the baby. Anyways, he told me the story about, have you ever done a jugular venous stick? I go, no, Jack, what's that? And then he goes, oh, basically you just take the baby, you extend his neck over the head of the bed, and you stick the needle in the jugular vein and you draw the blood. The vein will stick out like a candy cane. And I'm like, Jack, you know, I did go to medical school. I'm not a head and neck surgeon, but I did take gross anatomy. I think there's some vessels in there that you don't want to mess with. Anyways, sorry. So I'm a pediatrician just like Dr. Gilliland was. Sorry, can't say it in the past tense. I'm a pediatrician just like Dr. Gilliland is. And one of the remarkable things about being a pediatrician is you see a newborn baby and you examine him and you say, everything looks great, parents, congratulations. The parents are looking at you kind of funny. And I'm like, you know, what's up? And they're like, oh, nothing, Dr. Khanna, you were my pediatrician when I was growing up. Well, you know, Jack, and I'm not sure if in the audience right now, but Jack took care of a family for 3 generations. If that ever happens to me, let me know, it's time to retire. I would like to talk about my father-in-law, my dad, and Dr. Gilliland for a few minutes, because that was a great generation. There's a reason why it was called the greatest generation. They were born before World War II, and from what I remember, they were always very, very well dressed, very well mannered, and very true gentlemen. I remember when I got my first job out of college, I took my dad to his favorite pizza place. And I was 22 years old. I could eat like a mule back then. So I'm in my 3rd slice of pizza, and I notice my dad, he hasn't touched a slice of pizza yet. I'm like, Dad, what's up? He goes, oh, no, I'm just waiting for the waiter to bring me my silverware so I can eat my pizza. And my dad always had pizza with a fork and a knife. He never had picked up the pizza with his hands. That's what manner is. These guys were the storytellers. I can tell you a story that Jack told me about World War II, how the special forces of the Indian Army back then helped in a battle in World War II. So I told the story to my uncles, who are generals in the Indian Army. They took off their glasses, they set it down, and they put down their whiskey glasses and goes, how in the heck did you know about that battle? That is highly classified information. So I don't know what Dr. Gilliland read, but it was amazing, the stories he told. I want to say a few words about my father, if you don't mind. My dad came to London in 1956. He was in his 20s. He loved London. He was single when he first came there. He lived there for about 12 years. He had his first child there. And when he had his stroke, he asked me, son, will you take me to London if I get better? I said, sure, Dad, I will. A few months after Dr. Gilliland died, I got a text from Ryan saying, hey, I got my first nursing job. I said, congratulations. He goes, yeah, thank you, but it's kind of bittersweet. And I asked him why, and he goes, because I wish my dad was around so that I could take him, so that he could see my first nursing job. Anyways, Ryan, our stories are very similar. Both of us lost our father when we were in our 40s. They were both 86. Dr. Gilliland was always referred to as Uncle Jack. You know, my father's name was Jatinder. Anyway, Jatinder eventually became Jat, and Jat eventually became Jack. All my high school friends and college friends and elementary school friends referred to my dad as Uncle Jack. You know, Ryan, I never did get to take my dad to, I never did get to take my dad to London. Your dad never did get to see your first nursing job. I'm not really sure why, but what I do know is that both our fathers lived a great life, full life. They traveled the world. They brought joy and happiness to a lot of people in this world. They were both very well-dressed, very well-mannered gentlemen who lived rich, full lives and traveled the world. They always had a story to tell. So, as much respect and admiration I have for Dr. Gilliland, if there's any more respect and admiration I could have for him, it happened on his last day on the planet Earth. I was in the hospital, Marcia was there with him, and he called me aside and he said a few words. Then he called Marcia and said a few words. Then he told Ryan that it's time. Sure enough, 24 hours later, he passed away. He made the decision himself while he was in his full senses, in his full spirits, in his full mind. He did not want his children to make that decision for him. In his memoir, it says that old dogs never die. They just sleep in your heart. Well, Jack, you will always have a special place in my heart, and everybody in the audience's heart, probably. So, at the end of the day, I would just like to say, I will miss my chief, I will miss my PIC, I will miss my colleague, but most of all, I will miss my friend. Thank you.
Wow, what a beautiful day it is, especially when we've come together and shared a lot of memories and stories about Jack. And I have a lot of stories and memories I want to share with you, but I want to start with something, my last memory with Jack, just a few hours before he passed away. We were at the hospital, Janice and I, and a lot of the family. and we were visiting, and then Pastor Jerry showed up for a prayer. And so we decided to surround his bed, and we prayed. We prayed not for his recovery, but we prayed for his to be received by our Lord in heaven. And that was very moving to me. You know, Jack woke up and began to pray with us. And that was just totally amazing to me, and I'll remember that for the rest of my life. I call it my little minor miracle, but that's why I wanted to start with that memory, because it's probably my best. So I met Jack for the first time around 1970 when he and Dr. Ishii started Lodi Pediatrics. And my older daughters were 3 and like six months old at the time. And so I'm not sure why I went to the doctor's office with the kids, but anyway, I ended up there. And I found out that he grew up in a campo like I did, and his father was a rural post master, and he delivered our mail. And of course, my folks knew him, Jack's father, really well, and it was kind of amazing how we both grew up. I never knew him, I don't think, when I was very young, but we experienced a lot of the same things, living in the country and growing up and farming a little bit. So it was just it's a wonderful thing that we got started right off the bat, because when you meet Jack, as you all know, it didn't take long to become really good friends with him because of his love and his manner, and it's just you just grab onto it. So I built a new house out on 88 in the early 70s, and one day we had a knock on the doorbell. Jack was at the front door, and he had car trouble, and he coasted into our driveway, and he knew where I lived. And so here's Melissa. She was, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8, and Jeff in the car with their mom. And so I go out, and I don't know, we pulled around with the car. Actually, we found out it was out of gas. So somehow, Jack opened the door, and as he closed the door, Melissa had her fingers on the door jamb. And he shut the door on her fingers, and she just, of course, yelled out and screamed and hollered. And he opened the door, and this is a doctor. He held her hand, blew on it, and kissed it, and said, "You'll be fine." I think your fingers are fine, right? Well, after that, I thought, this guy is a regular guy. This is my kind of doctor. He taught me how to kiss and blow on my kids' fingers forever. Anyway, so that was one of our funny times. And then so Janice and I bought the back part of my folks' ranch where we are today. And lo and behold, Jack buys the rentals property right next door and becomes my next door neighbor. And he and I put in a walnut orchard together and farmed. And he had a smaller acreage than and I had the permits for spraying and the harvesting contact. So I farmed his, and we shared a lot of good times with farming together. And so when we decided to build St. George Winery, he grasped for that, and he and Jackie became a really good, helpful participants. Wine and Chocolate, they come in and help, and became a great supporter for our winery. And I think that was a great thing. So the other things, Jack was always involved with our personal family life. We became integrated with our family. I went to his weddings, his family weddings. He came to ours, the baptisms, and all of the celebrations and events that we had in our family, we shared together. And it was a really amazing time that we spent with him. He was just part of our family. We are still today. So that was a really good thing. Before I close today, about 10 years ago, I asked Jack to join my Rotary Club, and he's a great participant of the local community, especially for the Boys and Girls Club. He supports and donates quite a bit to them, and he was perfect for us, for Rotary and all of our, and I'm going to have somebody come up and talk about that in a minute. But anyway, Jack joined, and he became a great supporter of our Rotary group. Now, the other thing that we did a lot is traveling, and nobody traveled any more than Sandy and Tom Stokes. I mean, it was like, you had to go 20 trips all over the world. I was fortunate to do a couple of trips with Jack. We wanted Jack because he was like a tour guide, and I know he traveled with some of you out there. We always wanted him. I don't know if he read up on where we were going to be. He just knew, right? And so it was amazing. You could just go and, Melissa being in Europe a lot, they did a lot of traveling together, but it was just amazing how much he knew, and he was just a perfect person to have with us in traveling. We did a Nights of the Vine tour in New Zealand and Australia with him too, and that was like 15 days. We did extended time in Australia and had a really great time. Again, traveling was his thing, and he never held back. He went to every continent except for Antarctica, so we enjoyed traveling with him. So I'm going to ask a fellow Rotarian, Mark Chandler, to come up. He is the former mayor of Lodi, and he's our former, he's a member of my Rotarian, and we have an award, and he's going to talk about what Jack is being awarded, and we're going to provide it to the family. So anyway, thank you very much, and we hope to see you in the future.
Good job, Vern, and thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to present this fellowship today. And I'm really honored to be a part of this. It's amazing to me when you go to people's memorial service and it turns out to be more of a reunion than a memorial. So I'm following in the footsteps of so many wonderful people with all their great stories. And I don't have a lot of stories about my time with Jack. I've known him for a couple of decades, but my day job was to promote Lodi wine all around the state and around the world. And it wasn't infrequent that when I would introduce myself as being from Lodi, California, the response would be, well, you must know Dr. Jack Gilliland. Well, yes, I do, very proudly. So his reputation goes far and wide. And as Vern mentioned, he's been a member of Rotary for the last 10 years. And Rotary has a very high honor that they bestow on mostly living Rotarians, but often in a posthumous way. Rotary has been improving communities around the globe and locally for over 120 years. And their highest honor is this Paul Harris Fellowship. And so on behalf of Lodi Rotary Club, I want to offer the family the Paul Harris Fellowship. This fellowship is one of Rotary International's most prestigious honors. Recipients are presented with a certificate recognizing their service above self, which is our global motto, and it's named after Rotary's founder, Paul Harris. This recognition celebrates individuals who go above and beyond in serving their communities, making a lasting impact through their dedication to making the world a better place. And clearly, Jack's life was a perfect embodiment of those values. So this is the Rotary International Paul Harris Fellow Certificate for Dr. Jack Gilliland, and it is signed by Holger Knack, who is the chair of the Rotary Foundation Trustees, which is a major, major global charitable foundation, and by the president of Rotary International, Francesco Arezzo from Italy. So I'll pass this on to the family.
For those of you that don't know me, my name's Ryan. I'm the youngest. When people talk about my father, the first thing they mention is that he never forgot anyone. He had a memory like a steel trap. He could remember your name, your kids' names, your child's diagnosis from 5 years prior, ask how they were doing, and yet still somehow find a way to ask about your cousin's fishing trip 3 years ago. As a pediatrician, he wasn't just respected, he was genuinely loved. In this town, it felt like everyone knew him. And more importantly, everyone felt known by him. I remember as a child going to breakfast after church, and after we'd pay the bill, it would take us another 30 minutes or so to leave. We had to stop and visit with half the restaurant on the way out, and that was just normal for him. He had a gift for making people feel included, important and cared for. Whether you were a colleague, a patient, a friend, or someone that he had just met, he gave you his full attention. And while many people knew him as a physician and administrator at Kaiser Permanente, to me he was Dr. Jack. As his stepchild, he never asked me to call him Dad. He never expected it, and he never needed the title. But over time, I did. And in every way that mattered, he was the only father that was truly present in my life. He was one of those old school men who always had a saying ready. Usually it came with a grin. He was letting you in on a secret that the rest of the world had forgotten. One of his favorites was when his grandmother used to say, "That knowledge and a nickel will get you a ride on the subway." It was a reference to whatever we were speaking about, but it is his way of saying that knowledge alone, no matter how right or impressive, can still feel inconsequential in this world. If someone was being too difficult, a little too confident, or going in the wrong direction, he might say, "Have you ever heard of the equine paradox?" And look at him, that there are more horses' asses than horses in the world. Delivered completely deadpan, of course, which somehow made it funnier and more effective at the same time. He also had a mischievous side. He loved a good dirty joke. But he always knew, most of the times, exactly when it was appropriate to tell them, and just as importantly, when it wasn't. One of my personal favorites was what his mother always said: no matter how thin a pancake is, there's always two sides. His way of reminding us, usually when we didn't want to hear it, that there was always another perspective, even when we were certain that we were right. He believed in accountability, hard work, doing the right thing, helping people, and not because it benefited you, but because it was the right thing to do. In his mind, that wasn't just a principle, it was a standard you carried into every part of your life. And he would always say, "Remember, Ryan, when you're treating a patient, treat them as you would want your own mother to be treated." That was the expectation he lived by, and the one he quietly held everyone else to as well. And he definitely believed in toughness. I remember when he was teaching me to ride a bike, I was very resistant to try to ride my bike without training wheels. I was terrified. I told him, "I'm going to fall and split my head open." Without missing a beat, he would say, "Well, we can head down to the office and we'll just stitch you up." And honestly, that pretty much sums it up. He had his way of taking the fear out of situations. He didn't pretend that life wasn't hard. He just believed you could handle it. And if you couldn't, you'd figure out a way to do it together. That was him, practical, calm under pressure, and deeply caring in a way that sometimes showed up as sarcasm, humor, or a perfectly timed saying. He achieved so much professionally, but what stands out most isn't the titles or the accomplishments. It's the example he set. He showed us what integrity looks like. He showed us how to treat people. He showed us that success means very little if you aren't kind and humble. And I think that's why so many people, especially the people here, loved him. The older I get, the more I realize how rare that is. I know many of us here have our own version of Dr. Jack Gilliland. Dad, the doctor, the mentor, the leader, the friend, the husband. And what's remarkable is that all of those versions are true. He left an impression everywhere he went, and even now I can still hear him speaking in those little phrases, those sayings that somehow I carried both humor and truth in the same time. And if he were here right now, I'm pretty sure he'd tell us not to make too big a fuss. But he deserves this fuss because he mattered, because he made people feel seen, because he lived in a way that reminded all of us something simple but easy to forget. As the writer Ann Diller said, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. I'm reminded of an old Persian saying attributed to the stories of King Solomon in the 13th century. This too shall pass. Another one of his favorite sayings. When things are bad, remember, it won't always be this way. Take one day at a time. When things are good, remember, it won't always be this way. Enjoy every great moment. And I think, if you really knew him, there's one more thing that fits him just as much as anything else. Mark Twain. The fear of death follows from the fear of life. A man who lives fully is prepared to die at any time. Because he did live fully, not cautiously, not halfway, not holding back parts of himself that made him who he was. He showed up for people, for work, for life, for all of it. With humor, with honesty, with toughness, and with the kind of care that people don't forget. And maybe that's what we're really here left with. Not just remembering him, but trying in our own way to live a little more like he did every day. Thank you.
Oh, I haven't even started and I'm gonna cry. Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa. I'm the oldest, the favorite daughter until Sherry came along. I'm gonna call her child number 5. And without Sherry, none of this would have been possible today, so I have to give her a big shout out. Another one of Dad's sayings was, okay, okay, you say. I want to thank everybody so much for coming today to celebrate such an extraordinary life of Jack Gilliland. We've heard so many wonderful stories about how he touched so many people across the community and within our family. So Dad was also known in the early age as Jackie, Jack, Dr. Gilliland, Daddy, Dad, Dr. Jack, and Papa. I know many of you here have your own Dr. Jack stories of how he showed up for your family, your children, and our community. He was a revered pediatrician, always caring. We heard some wonderful things. Even my mom said that Jack was an excellent doctor, and which, coming from an ex-wife, that was very high endorsement. So a few things you may not know. We've learned a lot today about Dad. My dad loved to farm. His first job as a kid was picking grapes and almonds, or almonds, and when he returned to Lodi, he bought 20 acres of walnuts. He spent hours driving around on his tractor, tending to the trees, and employing some very low-paid child labor, Jeffrey and me, 25 cents a bucket. And for 45 years in Acampo, there were walnut trees, as Vern has said, trellised roses, grafted fruit trees, and more. And Ryan would very regularly get him up on his tractor, riding around the back with a huge smile on his face. Another thing Dad said is the problem we face is, Dad was not sporty. He didn't jog, he didn't work out, he didn't play sports, and while Jackie loved golf, you'd think as a doctor, Dad would have picked up golf, but he didn't. I'm not entirely convinced that wasn't just Jackie's way of getting a few peaceful hours away from him. But to his credit, he did join her for scuba diving adventures. So from the Grand Cayman to Tahiti to the Dead Sea and exploring sunken shipwrecks. What he lacked in sportiness, he made up with a passion for 2 things, and we've talked a lot about that today, food and travel. He and Jackie traveled far and wide, as Vern has said. They traveled throughout North America, Europe, Russia, Turkey, Egypt, New Zealand, China, and even to the southern tip of South America. My dad majored in history at university, and that stayed with him for the rest of his life. Right? He memorized everything. In his love of facts, of stories, and exploring, and everywhere he went, yes, he was the tour guide, he soaked up that culture and that history, and he loved chatting with local people to get the real story. Dad always encouraged me to get out and go, to see the world, to be curious, to think bigger. And my first overseas trip with him was to Eastern Europe in 1980, and that was before he and Jackie were married, so you couldn't be seen together on a trip. Then a 6-week Lions Club youth exchange, and later really encouraged me to study abroad. And of course, conveniently, that then gave Jackie and Dad a reason to come visit wherever I was in the world. In Europe, that meant a slow-going midnight ferry, because we missed B2 time changes, my fault, across the English Channel, or the car train through and underneath the Channel Tunnel, or a journey on the Flying Scotsman train to Edinburgh, roaming the romantic Strasse in southern Germany. You were there, Michael. Exploring London, Normandy, Andalusia, and on and on and on. The last overseas trip Dad took was in the fall of 2021 with Michael, Ryan, and myself that remapped that original Eastern European trip. But he insisted this time that we start in Berlin so he could visit the Pergamon Museum. He wanted to see all of the Egyptian relics and the Ishtar Gate, that history that he loved so much. And if you've ever traveled with him, where's Tom? Hi, Tom. You know one thing was coming, a cathedral. In England alone, there was St. Paul's, Westminster, Salisbury, St. George's at Windsor Castle, with all their spires, their stained glass, and towering organs. And if we were lucky, we'd sit quietly at evensong as the organ filled the space, that deep, thundering sound that you don't just hear, but you feel. Dad loved those. And every Easter, we traveled to Grace Cathedral in San Francisco with Bob Breckenridge, his best friend since second grade, and his girls. Mitzi, where are you? There you are, sweetie. To attend services at Grace Cathedral, specifically so Dad could listen to the Dixieland Jazz Band. So, which is why today our setting and the music is a beautiful and perfect memorial to Dad. Dad and Jackie traveled to Connecticut and further afield when we decamped to London. Not so much to see us, but let's be honest, to see the grandkids. And every trip or visit had one non-negotiable rule. This is a special occasion, which meant an exceptional dining experience. From a chef-led, Michelin-starred New York City restaurant where he happily paid $35 for a bowl of buttered pasta so that grandchild number 2 could be eating and declared it worth it, to home-cooked lobster dinner with every Connecticut visit, to seeking out the oldest restaurant in London, Rules. Each visit was a culinary feast, and in his way, that was Dad. He made those ordinary moments feel like special occasions. Now, Papa has been an immensely proud grandparent, and as many of you know, because he tells a lot of stories and he shares that with everybody, he valued education very highly, and he especially loved that so many of the grandchildren have also found a love for the sciences. Nathan is studying psychology. Caitlin graduated Oxford, Mass. Brendan is graduating an astrophysicist. Stephen is studying industrial and systems engineering, lost my place. Megan is studying biomedical engineering, and Michelle and Melissa are excelling very well in their STEM subjects. He followed every step with enormous pride. I think Kristen's talked about being a cheerleader. Dad was also my biggest cheerleader. He was always positive, encouraging, and supportive. He loved that I was going to Cal, but I'm really sure he had absolutely no idea what a political economies of industrialized societies major actually meant. And when I was accepted to a master's program in foreign affairs, he said, I'm sorry, Melissa, what kind of career do you do with that? So a pivot, a few more exams, and off in another direction. So returning from England to Connecticut a few years ago gave me a special opportunity to visit Dad often. More conversations, more honesty, and even preparing together for this moment. But all through of it, he never lost what defined him, his optimism. He became a huge emotional support for me. That hardwired positivity was his great virtue, and it's something I feel very lucky to carry forward. So as we leave today, I hope that you keep sharing your very own Dr. Jack stories with each other and beyond, the travel tales, the office visits, the jokes, and the kindnesses. And Atul, you stole my line. He said, "Old dogs never die, they just sleep in your heart, and today, as always, that is where Dad will be." And I wanted to invite everybody, if you can join us after the services. Janice and Vern has offered up the St. George's Winery, so we would love to have you join us out there for a reception. So thank you very much.
We have this hope. There's a picture by Nathan Green that the team will put up here momentarily of the second coming of Jesus Christ. You've already sang about it here moments ago when Janine Hansen played the organ so wonderfully. And as we were singing, I was not only thinking of the words that we have this hope in Jesus' return and a resurrection day that will be out of this world, but I thought about how Jack loved the organ and how he loved listening to the organ. And when we would have high church here at different times during the year and the organ would play, whether it was Janine Hansen playing it or Frederick Schmidt or Alvary Walters or whoever would play the organ, Dr. Jack would be sitting right over here in this area of the sanctuary listening to it and just really enjoying and speaking about it afterwards and so forth. You know, he not only gave hope to those who were having little ones and hope in children's always being blown and kissed and all would be better. He gave hope to people like us here today. For a time, he was our, as I mentioned, funeral chair, and he would arrange services like this with me. We would partner together. He would arrange the team that would take care of the reception and all the little niceties and the guest book and everything of that nature, and then I would take care of the sermon. We partnered well like that, at least I believe we did. And I remember one occasion where it was a funeral during the middle of the week, and most of the team was not available. In fact, the only ones who were available were Dr. Jack and Jackie. He said, "Pastor, what am I going to do?" I said, "Let's team up, my friend." So my wife happened to not be away at work, and she came in, and I said, "My wife and I will help you. It'll be the Fantastic Four. We got this." And so they were all doing their thing. I was in here doing my thing and preaching, and then I came in, and my wife's like, "Where have you been?" "I've been giving the sermon. Here, let me help." And so then I noticed something. I noticed how much of a leader Dr. Jack was. He was like the perfect administrator of the kitchen. He was telling Jackie exactly what to do, Cowdy what to do, me what to do, and then I followed an example. And then I said, "Well, I'll go take care of the crowd." And so he was taking care of things inside, I was taking care of things outside, and I think Jackie and Cowdy did most of the intensive work. But he handled it so professionally and so well. And then he lobbied for the receptions and for the volunteers and what we would need for the future with our church board and groups. He wanted to make everything very special, right? He wanted to make sure that people in their last part of the journey, so to speak, or in the twilight time, would have everything that they would need to feel the hope of Jesus in their hearts. And so today it's unique that I'm here speaking in remembrance of him and thinking about what he believed and what I want to share with you in closing today. Jack believed in the hope of the soon return of Jesus Christ. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul shares with his youth pastors, Timothy, Titus, and so forth. He shares of this blessed hope of the day when Christ will return in his glory. In fact, there were those in Thessalonica, in that Eastern church, that were mourning. I don't know if Paul came upon a funeral like this today, or a memorial service like this today, or maybe a funeral or some kind of service, and they were grieving as if they had no hope. And so he shares with them these words about when Christ will come again. They're found in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. He starts out sharing how the clouds will roll back like a scroll, and then there'll be the Lord, and surrounding him will be thousands and 10,000s and thousands of his angels, and a trump shall sound, much like our wonderful trumpets here today. A trump shall sound, and then the graves will open up. I can only imagine what the people of that church were thinking at that time, in thinking about the graves opening and people coming forth. But this is what he shares. He says, "For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout and with the voice of the archangel and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first." We can only imagine what it'd be like to go to Cherokee Memorial Park or Lodi Funeral Park or any other place where our loved ones are sleeping in the grave. And on that day, the righteous will ascend, and we shall watch. What a day that will be. And what will become of us on that day? He continues to give us hope as well. He says in verse 17, "Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord." Can you imagine what that's like? Any of you ever looked up at cloud watching before? Anybody? I know I used to when I was a kid. And you see the different shapes. So that one looks like an ice cream cone. That one looks like a whale. You ever looked for God in the clouds? God, where's heaven? Where are you? On that day, we won't have to wonder anymore. Jesus will be there in the center of the clouds, and we will raise up and meet him in the air. But we shall be changed. We won't be meeting him like this. The Apostle Paul shares with the people of the church of Corinth these words about how God will mysteriously transform us into eternal travelers with eternal bodies. He says, "Behold, I tell you a mystery." Now, he skips the mystery, right? How many of you love a good mystery novel or mystery movie, right? You watch, you're kind of wondering, oh, who did it? Who's the one? Paul's not going to mess with any of that. He goes straight to the end. "I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall be changed in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet call." Wow, what's that going to be like? Man, the system couldn't even take it. Look, the system just shut down. It's like, oh, this is so overwhelming. It's gone. Maybe we can get that back up. Thank you. At that last trumpet in the twinkling, how long does it take your eye to twinkle? Can you imagine being transformed right there as you're flying? That's a new thing, right? Flying up into the clouds, being transformed there, being changed. And he says to us this, he says, "For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality." Will be clothed with immortality on that day. And what becomes of death, this former prisoner of many of us? Well, he says, when we have put on incorruption, and when we will be clothed with immortality, thus shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, "Death is swallowed up in victory." Death will be no more. It will have no more power over any. It will have no more sting. It will be done. And then our celestial home will be awaiting. Jesus said these words to his disciples when he closed his talk with them after the meal in that upper room, before he went out to the betrayal, to the arrest, to the scourging, the trial, to the cross. He said to them these words. They're found in John 14, 1-4. He says to us these words here today. "Don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. And where I go, you know, and the way you know. Talk about an invitation, my friends. Talk about an invitation. The kingdom of heaven. Jesus says, hey, it's a place for you. It's a place for me. It's a place for all who want to live eternally in happiness together again. Can you imagine what it's going to be like when the redeemed reach those celestial shores, those clouds that were walking there in heaven? I don't know exactly what heaven's going to be like. Never been there yet. Planning to go. But can you imagine what it's like? You take those first steps towards that holy city, and the gate is wide open. And then you catch a glimpse of those foundations of the precious stones and jewels that adorn the foundations of the city, and how it shines like pure, transparent golden glass. And there's this light that's emanating from the city, which John talks about, John the disciple, who says there is no need of the sun's light, there is no need of a lamp, for the Lord God gives its light. And then that gate I spoke about, that gate is opened up wide. You can see it as you walk by. It's the size of a giant pearl, and I don't know how many can fit at once through that gate. Come one, come all. And then we see that place that Jesus has in store for us. I wonder what Jack's place is going to be like. I wonder if it's going to be like that, like the farmhouse, or I wonder if his dog is going to be there. I wonder what any of our places are going to be like that Jesus is preparing for us right now. Don't you want to know? I have hope that Jack will be there. I have hope that his name is written in the Lord's book of life. I hope that Jesus Christ will have all of your names written in the book of life. When your name's written in the book of life, you have no need, no fear of the judgment nor the judge, because Jesus is a just judge. And as one of my colleagues in the ministry has said, he is our forever friend. I look forward to that first worship service in heaven. I don't know, Fred, I see you at the door there. I don't know if you're going to be playing the organ, or Janine, if you're going to be playing it, or both of you are playing that celestial organ with the angels, and we're all singing that song up there. Maybe there'll be a wonderful piano playing like you gave to us, that beautiful gift to our two pianists today, or like Cell Block 7, maybe you'll be playing up there, or the angels will have their jazz band playing, and there'll be this huge worship service together. I do know this. John saw in vision where he said they were singing to God, "Worthy, worthy, worthy is the Lord God Almighty. Worthy is He to be praised." And then if I look over, and in that innumerable multitude that John talks about in Revelation 19, maybe I'll look over and I'll see Jack. He's probably going to look a little different with the heavenly body, and so will I. So all of us, right? Amen? But he'll be saying, amen. It's good to see you, my friend. What a day that will be. And then maybe he and I will take a walk on the highway of holiness that the prophet Isaiah talks about in his messianic prophecy, on that road that's transparent gold, where no robber will overtake, where no lion will overtake. That road that leads to the throne of God. That road that leads to Jesus. On my final Sabbath here in this church, this Fairmont Seventh-day Adventist Church, which my heart's still here in many ways. It was a good long journey that we had here. The final weekend was March 1 and 2. I remember seeing my friend, Dr. Jack. He came with his caregiver. They were sitting right over here. And I was so thrilled to see him because I hadn't seen him for a little while. And I remember at the end of the service, we all got up and we surrounded the whole church and we held hands. We sang this song, "Side by Side We Stand." If you don't know, if you're not familiar with it, Google it. Check it out. It's a good song. And we sang together. But that wasn't the last time I saw him. The very next day, they had a reception. And that was kind of like my last event here. And he was there. I got to see him in that fellowship hall, that reception, and we shared stories, and we shared an embrace, and it was a beautiful time. Today, I just have memories of him being here. I look forward to the time where I meet him there and we can meet Jesus together and see his smiling face. And I hope that you all will be there too. And we can make an event out of it. We can share all the stories, we can share all our heartfelt moments, and then we can explore eternity together with the hope that we have here today. I hope that hope is yours as well. I hope that God will bless you and keep you in his care. I hope that his Holy Spirit will seal you with his seal of salvation, and I hope that we will be reunited with Jack when Jesus comes. With this hope, I invite you to bow your heads with me one more time as we pray. Kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for Dr. Jack Gilliland. We thank you for who you created him to be. Before you created this earth, you knew he would be born. You fashioned him just as you fashioned David, as he recounts in Psalm 139. And all the days of his life are written in your book of life. We have been so blessed with him in our lives. Thank you for sharing him with us. Thank you for creating him for us and for many others that they could receive blessings of life. Lord, please be with his family, with his friends, with his colleagues, his church members, his society members, all those who he touched and all those who touched his life. Please be with each one here today as we remember him and as we look forward to seeing him again. Lord, please be with all of us here today. Be with us all the days of our lives and help us to live out each and every day with a blessed hope. In Jesus' name, amen.